Hi, and welcome to Pockets Full of Soup. I'm Jared Petty, your host. Today I'm joined by...
Brian Altano. First of all, that's my name. That's the name of your show is Pockets Full of Soup? You know,
Yeah.
It's like that's scientifically impossible, right?
No, it's happened. I've done it. I've had pockets full of soup.
Like both pockets?
Yeah, multiple pockets full of soup. In Japan, where I used to live, they had at a cold winter's morning, you could go to the vending machine outside the grocery store, and they had a row of cold drinks. And then they had a row of hot drinks that you could buy in these little cans. And they sell this delicious corn soup in these little heated cans. They're sealed. And so sometimes when I was really, really cold, I would buy several of them and fill my coat and pants pockets with them and use them to keep warm. So I kept my pockets full of soup, and it kept me warm on a cold day.
Wow, really?
Yeah, really. They were cheap, you know. It's just like, man, I'm freezing. So just fill your pockets up with soup.
You know, like my dog ate half a string of Christmas lights once and shit it out, but I didn't name my podcast that.
Well, no, but I mean, I'm also creatively bankrupt, so I'm just coming up with the best I can.
I love it. I love where you are.
Well, this is the idea is that this is sort of a tiny beacon of warmth and joy and happiness, or at least sincerity, not always happiness, in the midst of the swirling, angry maelstrom of media and all the shouting that goes on around it.
So people's like phones that deliver podcasts to their ears are technically like tiny cans of hot corn soup.
That's the idea. Yeah.
All right, now I totally get it.
Except it goes to their brain and their heart and other organs in their bodies.
See, it takes a minute, but I think then there it is.
It's really a silly name, but
Well, thanks for having me.
I registered the URL, so we're stuck with it. Thank you.
You spent the $7.99
Yeah,
on GoDaddy, and there's no turning back.
there's
It's
no
basically
turning
a
back now.
tattoo that you renew once a year.
Exactly. So
Or auto-renew, depending on your credit card information.
Brian, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
First question's always going to be the same.
Okay.
Until I decide to change it. So we'll start there.
Do you have a better title for a podcast?
No, you're an interesting person.
Thanks, man.
You're a person who makes their living in media. You work at IGN. You're on the Comedy Button. You appear lots of different places. Knockin' Boots. Right?
Yeah. You saved me so much time on plugs. I just got that out of the way.
Yeah, we'll do it again later. But nonetheless, you and people know a lot about you, I think. So we're gonna start by asking you about somebody else who matters to you. This is kind of a good portion of what we do here is telling the stories of the people who made us who we are for the better. So I want you to tell me about somebody you're thankful for. Who's someone you're thankful for?
So I think the person that immediately comes to my mind is my mother. I think to be thankful for somebody, it has to kind of be a two-way street in a lot of ways. Like, I'm thankful for Shigeru Miyamoto for basically creating the modern-day video game industry as we know it, right? And I'm thankful for Chris Cornell for making fucking weird alternative music in the 90s, and RZA for producing some of my favorite beats of all time. But I've never really interacted with any of those people. I mean, I met Miyamoto for like an afternoon, but I don't think he remembers it. But my mom, She made me who I am, and I put her through hell.
You really?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, that's the best kind of two-way street you can offer a parent is to put them through hell and then ultimately redeem yourself as a human being to the point where they're proud of you and they can go, okay, that made sense.
Well, let's start right there. Let's talk about that pivot.
Sure.
We'll get back to the beginning and some other things later. Let's talk about that pivot. What was the point in your life where... What's the setup? What was the hell?
When did I start giving my mom hell?
And when did you start giving her hell? And what's the narrative of the rollover? What caused that to change?
Well, if you ask her, which is a weird thing to just walk up to somebody and be like, when did your son start giving you hell? Unprovoked. She'll say the moment I was born. Okay. And I was the firstborn child. I was born 2 weeks later than I should have been, which means I was just like, I don't want to go out there.
Yeah, you're just an enormous baby that does not want to leave.
I would have turned 10 in there if you could just
okay.
If you could like put, I don't know, like food, like real food in there, like and just air cartoons, I would have stayed in there for a long time. But
that's not all that different from your life now.
No, not at all.
Okay, yeah.
I'm sort of in a giant womb now.
Yeah.
I was crying on day one. Like day one, I was screaming. I did not want to be there. I cried morning to night. I slept 5 minutes a year. I shit and screamed constantly. I was hell. And the thing is, in the early 80s, I was born in 1981. When you're a baby and it's pre-internet, there's no like what do I do? Like Google doesn't autofill your answers for you. You have like there's a book on your shelf written by
there's that book, right? Yeah,
written by Dr. Spock, which is fucked up because there's 2 Spocks in your life growing up, and one of them has ears that are pointy and can do that with his hands, and the other one tells you everything about how to be alive.
Okay,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that book was on the shelf for years growing up, and I knew I was giving my parents hell when they would reach up for it and pull it down and disappear huffing for a few hours and come back and be like, oh, all right, well, this is normal. That's okay. But I was the firstborn. I have 2 younger brothers, and immediately I was screaming, crying, yelling. Then I grew older, and I would just get in trouble. That's all I did. I just constantly questioned authority, constantly pushed people's buttons.
What was that all about?
I was short growing up, and I was just sort of feisty. I had 2 Italian parents. One of them had come. My mom was an immigrant from the East, from Italy. Like she actually came here on a boat, which was like fucking nuts to me because everything is around you, and then you're like, well, there's another land, and it's better.
How old was she when she came over?
She was 16, so she came kicking and screaming. Like that's something I don't think a lot of people can really identify with. Is the idea of like there are people who move growing up, like military brats who move from town to town. There are people who just like their parents get in a fight and. Like the Fresh Prince, right?
Yeah.
Like he was like what 16 years old, 15. I don't know how he was 40 when he was 15. And just one day you're like, I have to go to a new town. This sucks. My mom went to a new fucking civilization.
Yeah.
Like her dad believed all that streets are paved with gold shit, and
she was the Fresh Prince of Florence.
Yeah. He was in the merchant. My grandfather was in the Merchant Marines. So he was traveling the world. He would come back every 2 years and be like, look what I brought you. Like trinkets from a foreign land, and they'd be like, you have a son and he's way older now. Like that was the trade-off. So she didn't see her dad a lot, and one day he was just like, we got to go to the promised land. And this was like post that sort of like Gangs in New York version of Ellis Island where they throw a rock at your head the second you get here and make you vote. But it was still kind of fucked up. Like they fucked up her last name on the way in. You know?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so are you what was her last name?
It was like it's rolling R's, so it's like Cirillo.
Okay.
And they took the O off and just put an I there.
Oh.
I don't know why. I would have made it Smith or like.
So she had to live with kind of a weird mutant name?
Immediately. So you get here, so when you're 16, like I went on vacation with my parents when I was 16.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go because I was like, I have a girlfriend. I'm going to marry her. Like everything you think is going to be forever when you're 16. 16 is when you're kind of like at the top of your world, right?
Okay.
So they took her out of all of that and they put her on a boat with a suitcase that fit everything that she owned, which to me, like, I don't know how big that suitcase was, but when I hear that story, it's her with this little briefcase, and her brothers are like, Papa, we are going to America. It's just like the Five-O goes wet. It's,
Yeah, for some reason it's the 19th century. Everything's 100%. In sepia tone.
Yep.
Okay.
Everything's
right.
everything's brown, and like you're on the boat for 9 years, and it's full of rats.
Did she stand on the deck, and the Statue of Liberty was there?
Yeah,
and
like you lost 40 people at sea. Like a bunch of people died of gangrene. No, I doubt it.
Okay,
I'm sure it was fine. But yeah, she did take a boat over here, and she got here and got to Ellis Island, went through that whole thing, and then immediately had to be indoctrinated into the northern New Jersey or the Jersey City school system.
Okay,
which is at the time was full of a lot of people who had similar stories like that, but also full of a lot of people who are just like grew up in Jersey City, just kind of like the sons and daughters of like truck driving alcoholics. And
describe Jersey City in one word.
Dirty.
Okay, that's the one word for Jersey
And it's
City.
weird because New Jersey's the Garden State, right?
Yeah.
But Jersey City is specifically, and in a lot of ways it's gotten better, a lot of ways it's gotten worse. But Jersey City was specifically sort of shady, like corrupt cops and, like I heard a story once about this police officer he was in a high-speed pursuit with somebody.
Yeah.
And he pulled out a shotgun and just started firing down the street, which I think in 2016 is perfectly normal.
Yeah, actually that seems hauntingly familiar.
Yeah, but back then it was like perfectly okay. So she was thrown into that, and all of a sudden she's like, what are this? How do I be an American teenager?
Yeah.
So like most kids go through puberty and they're like, oh, my legs are weird now. And they're like, how do I deal with this? She's like, fuck you. Everything I know is gone.
Yeah, I've left everyone I ever loved behind. Did she speak English?
She learned. Well, the thing is, here's the trick. Like anyone else from anywhere else in the world can come to America and immediately hit the ground running because they're taught English at a young age. Like,
okay.
She learned English in second grade.
Good.
And in America, you maybe take half of a language when you're like 15.
So that was to her advantage
Yeah.
to a point there. She was actually ready for it.
Whereas, like, if I went to France when I was in the middle of my French classes, I would, like, all they taught me in French class was how to tear, like, Revlon ads out of mags. And they're like, that's a French word. Bring those into school. Like, it was a treasure hunt.
So did your mom act out on this?
No. She was completely behaved. She was wonderful. She was also, like, her parents were old school Italians, right?
Okay.
So they were, like, very much, like, I won't say, like, medieval, but there's a much more traditional path that someone like her would have been on. She came from a long line of women who, at a young age, have to sew their sheets for their wedding night. When they're 5. You ever heard of that shit?
No, I don't know about this.
Yeah, like 5-year-old Italian women start sewing this huge thing, and they're like, "What's this for?" And they're like, "Well, someday you're gonna get fucked on this thing." So it's weird. The whole thing's weird.
And they give 5-year-olds needles. That's the most disturbing part for me.
Yeah, I mean, we give 5-year-olds guns in America, don't we?
That some do. That's true. That does happen.
Yeah, so I think, like, for her to come to America as sort of this, like, strong, independent woman, and then not immediately just become a housewife, but also start, like, focusing on college and career and all the other stuff. And the thing with her was, like, immediately she wasn't given the opportunity of college. Her parents were like, "Don't go work in a bank, make money, and marry somebody and fall in love." And she always wanted to go to college. And she wasn't given that opportunity until she was 34 years old.
But she did go eventually.
She went eventually when she was 34, and she had 3 sons. She went to Columbia, which is a fucking prestigious-ass school, Ivy League. And then she went to Pratt, which is another prestigious-ass school.
How did she swing that? How did she make that happen?
She started taking night classes while raising kids and started taking community classes, built together an awesome portfolio. She wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
She's the kind of person... We're jumping around a lot.
That's okay. No, that's just fine.
But the best thing about my mom was that when she couldn't shove a pacifier in my mouth and make me stop crying, she handed me art supplies. When I would come up to her bored, miserable, angry, getting in trouble, she'd slide a whole, Tupperware full of, like, paint supplies, really nice markers, pens, pastels, clay.
Stuff she kept around because she cared about it for architecture work, or
Both.
things that she knew
Both.
you
It was half, like, her abandoned supplies that she
Okay.
had moved on while getting new stuff, and stuff that she was just, like, create. Like, here's a huge box of 64 Crayolas. Here's a big box of Prismacolor markers.
So did she become an architect?
She did. She did. And the cool thing about that was there was this amazing crossover. Architects at the time, before it was like 100% AutoCAD, which is the architecture design program, or at least was for a while, had to build architectural models out of foam core and X-Acto blades and, like, this weird smelly glue.
Yeah.
And she'd be up at 2 o'clock in the morning. This is, like, the one anecdote that will always stick with me from my mom, is that she was up at 2 o'clock in the morning, 35 years old, 3 kids asleep, my dad asleep upstairs, and she's building an architecture model. And the power went out because it started raining. Like, thunderstorms in New Jersey were a big thing. And she cut her finger on the X-Acto blade and wrapped it up in tape because there were no Band-Aids in the house. So her fingers are gushing blood. She's wrapping it up in basically, like, artist tape.
Yeah.
And surrounded by candles, like candlelight at the kitchen table, she's building architecture models. And I heard her crying, and I came upstairs, and I was like, "Mom, what's wrong?" And she's like, "I don't know why I'm doing this." And I'm like, "Because you're good at it, and you love it." And she was like, "Do you want to be an architect when you grow up?" And I was like, "I did, but not anymore."
Like, you said that to her?
And that was, like, because that's when I realized, like, it's not just... Architecture is not just sculptures that people live in. Like, it has to be structurally sound. If you make a funny building, like, it's a sad funeral. Like, a lot of people die in a funny building.
How old were you when this story happened?
I was probably 13, 14 years old.
I just now have this mental image of you and your mom making those little buildings in Nakatomi Plaza on the top floor. Anyway,
so the cool thing about that is, like, when I was 12 or 13, whenever I was still buying action figures. So she would bring these architecture models into classes, and either get a good grade on them or get them torn off the wall or torn off the desk, whatever it was. In Pratt, they were so vicious, and it's amazing. I even went to art school myself, but they would actually take your shit, and if they didn't like it, they would rip it in half in front of the room.
Wow.
Like, vicious shit. So
what was the philosophy behind that?
Break people. If you break people, they don't come back. It's the same thing the military does. I mean, it's the same thing a lot of art schools do, is that sort of boot camp of, like, we're going to make the first year classes 9 hours long. And when you leave, you'll never come back because you're horrified. But the people that stick with this, it's going to get easier for them in a lot of ways.
Like gross anatomy in med school.
Exactly.
Like that. Okay, I was wondering about that. So your mom came over here. She jumped forward in life. She made this dream happen despite 3 children. She made the dream come to life. Do you feel like what was it like for her looking at you as a self-described kind of problem kid, always in trouble? Was it hard for her to deal with the fact that she had gone through so many challenges?
Yes, 100%.
And then she saw you acting out, and she what? Describe that.
No, I mean, I heard many times, like, I didn't, come across the world for this shit, that kind of thing.
She actually said that?
It's, half the words might have been Italian.
Yeah.
But she, like, it sucked for my parents because they're now both teachers. They're both very well-read, very well-spoken people. My dad and mom both know, like, almost every Romance language. My dad's a translator. He translates in every language. And I am flunking out of French class, and they're just kind of like, what's the deal? Like, every single teacher would call them up. I got in trouble constantly. And they'd be like, Brian is a really smart kid, but he doesn't give a shit, doesn't apply himself. And that was like the running theme was like, we know there's something there. Why don't you give a shit about this? And I'm like, because I can already tell this doesn't matter. Which is, it's like fucking wearing the glasses from They Live. You're like, oh fuck, like I wish I didn't have these because now I see monster people everywhere.
So how did she deal with that? I mean, what became when? How about this? Let me ask you
discipline. They either like my parents are old country, so they'd smack you in the back of the head, or they'd just take your shit away. Yeah. And for me, it was my video games. Like they took away, which is like the biggest irony nowadays, is to be like, Mom, if you had let me keep those video games, like I might be running IGN. Instead, I'm just where I am. But they would take my Nintendo. They'd take the controllers. Once they figured out that you needed the controllers to play Nintendo, they would just take the controllers. Before that, they would rip the system out of the wall. And
but once they figured out it was useless without the controllers.
Yeah. And then there would be this whole fucking scavenger hunt of like, where are the controllers? And I wait for them to go to sleep, and I'd find them, go downstairs, beat Mega Man, all that kind of fun stuff. Like you couldn't keep me from that.
So where did the appreciation begin for you? Or the rollover happen when you began to perceive what was going on? Where you saw the tension between where she'd come from, where you were, and you rolled over from pushing back to gaining a relationship where you were understanding what all this actually meant?
I think they had one of hundreds of very heated, very personal one-on-ones with my teachers. We used to get these things called progress reports in the mail, which they sent you if you were good, and they sent you if you were bad. So I've heard. I don't know a single person that ever got a good one. Because it's just like YouTube comments. No one's ever like, oh, this is great. They're always like, fuck this shit.
I got great progress reports.
You really?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck you, man. Really?
Right,
what the fuck?
Always.
Nerd.
Yeah, totally.
No, so I used to get these things in the mail when I was in first grade. They were sad faces. And literally, they would give you a sad face to bring home, and your dad had to sign a sad face, or your mom, and bring it back in. And the first time I ever forged a signature was in first grade. I wrote my dad's name in my broken ass. I didn't even have to do like the R's were backwards and stuff like that. So they just had a lot of very personal conversations with teachers. What's wrong? What do we do? Should we put him in a special school? Should he be on Ritalin? Like, they kick you around the system a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think I just missed by like 3 or 4 years that sort of Ritalin epidemic that hit every other kid who was bouncing off the walls or creative, artistic, a little bit outside the box.
Yeah.
So they had this conversation, and they were like, look, Brian's failing at a French class right now. What can we do? And my mom was like, he really likes art. And they're like, well, why didn't he ever tell us that? I'm like, well, did you ever ask him, or do you just yell at him? Like, well, we mostly yell at him. We're terrible. That's why we work at high school. So, yeah. So they had a conversation with them, and I was in the middle. I remember this. I was in freshman year of high school, and I'm in the middle of a French test. And we had these loudspeakers in class. You probably never heard them for yourself. Fucking smiley face nerd. But I heard him constantly. He would go like, doot, Brian Altano please come to room 107. I don't think they said please. That would have been too much.
They just said,
yeah. Brian Altano come to 107. Yeah. And depending on how fast they were saying it, you know how fucked you were. Yeah. It was never like, if it was like, Brian Altano, please come to room 107. It was like, we found your thermos.
Yeah. If it was quick.
But they said it fast, which was like, get the fuck down here. So I walked out of and the teacher was like, right now, he's in the middle of a test. And they were like, doot, right now, like you're at war and they're on walkie-talkies.
Yeah. So
I go down there, and the guidance counselor, this guy, Mr. Downey, right?
Like your guidance counselor's name was Mr. Downey.
Yeah, exactly. Donnie Downer.
were you born in a Victorian novel?
Right. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, this crazy
or
old
like
lady in the attic.
Richard Scary book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they go, okay, what are you doing right now? And I'm like, I'm talking to you. And he's like, oh, asshole. No, like, what were you doing in that class? And he was like, I was like, I'm taking a French test. And he's like, well, how is it going? And I'm like, it's going great. I think I'm doing really well. And he's like, did you study a lot for it? And I was like, totally. And he's like, be totally honest. Like, what do you think you're going to get on this test? And I'm like, easily at least a B or B plus. And he was like, now like be totally honest with me. And I was like, I'm failing it. I didn't study. I don't know a word of that language. Please do everything you can to get me out of it. And he was like, what do you think of art? And I was like, I fucking love it. Like, it's great. You get to draw like Spider-Man, but he has a dick. And like, anything you want. The world is your oyster. So he goes, okay.
So you got into art so that you could draw superhero genitals.
I got into like 7 different art classes.
Yeah.
So they took me out of all the bullshit. And this is probably illegal, but it totally works. And they threw me at like every single art class they could, and all of a sudden I was top to bottom in art. And my mom, who had just graduated with like a nice degree a couple years before I think she was even still in the middle of it, from Pratt, getting her master's in architecture. All of a sudden it made me go, okay, I understand what it's like to create stuff specifically for a class and then put it up on the wall for other people to judge and get ripped apart or not feel good or whatever it is. So immediately we bonded. We immediately had this connection that had been long dormant since I was a little kid, drawing and stuff like that. And we immediately were like, okay, you found something you love. Go find it.
So
go
you had
get
a
it.
sympathy and an empathy built through art for both of you.
Yeah, and because of that, I got into a bunch of classes in college, and I still got in tons of trouble because there's a lot of trouble you can get in outside of just school. I mean,
yeah, sure. Oh, there's all kinds of trouble. But
yeah.
Does she still share that connection with you now?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah? Of course. Yeah.
Is she still doing architecture?
To an extent, yeah. Like she's actually she's on like a much higher plane from it now. Like she's actually doing like she does like city planning for like, or she's on like the town sort of like building org and all that kind of stuff.
Still in Jersey City?
No, just in a different part of New Jersey.
Okay, different part of New Jersey.
Yeah, and she teaches art at a college. She teaches 2D art. So it's like, it's weird because my dad, he's more of a writer and a reader, philosophy type of person. So it's where I learned how to like write and talk. And from my mom, I learned how to create and how to fail.
Who's your mom's favorite artist?
There's she loved she mostly architects actually. It was weird because she brought me to the Uffizi when I was like I learned to walk in art museums in Europe. I learned to walk in Italy. I spent the first year in, I want to say the first 2 years of my life were in 12 different cities in Europe. And she brought me to art museums and just parked me in front of them. She loves Picasso. She loves the Falling Gardens guy, the architect.
I'm sorry. I'm
totally
ignorant.
blanking. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, she had this great book called Le Beau's Woods growing up. There was this really like sort of avant-garde abstract architecture, which I learned a lot of my line work from. Like the kind of thing where like when I was bored and I didn't want to watch anything on TV, like I would pull one of her art books off these impossibly large tomes that weighed more than me and flip one open and have it collapse on my laps and just look at these gigantic drawings and paintings. Yeah, for her, like if you asked her, it would be a different story because she'd probably tell you a different artist every single day.
Okay.
She had a lot of Van Gogh prints hanging up in the house, stuff like that. She surrounded herself in beautiful paintings. And if you asked her when I was in high school, she would have said, "My son," like every good mother or grandmother. Right. Everyone's their art star is their own family. But
she proud of you?
Oh yeah.
When's the last time you saw her?
I saw her about a month and a half, 2 months ago, which has been tough because, as some of you may know, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 4 months ago today. And it's been difficult because I live in California and she wants me to continue my life and be happy. And we both want to strike that balance between like knowing that she's not going to be there forever and also not flying out at the drop of like, my back hurts. Is it cancer? I don't know. Like, did it spread there? I don't know. Well, maybe it is. Maybe this will be the last. But she's doing better than anyone anticipated. And it's been tough, like I FaceTime with her constantly, a couple times a week. And, sometimes you can tell she's doing really well with it. And sometimes it chips away. It's just, I think sort of anybody who's been in any prolonged medical procedure knows how it just takes a little bit out of you each time. Mm-hmm. And the idea of, I think specifically Italians are hardwired to live until they're 90 something. Both of my grandparents, her parents, who've had like a strict diet of pasta, olive oil, and red wine for 91, 92 years now, are both completely healthy. Yeah. You know, like my grandfather fell down the back steps in his house in Jersey City, fell down 15 concrete steps and got up looking like Anakin Skywalker at the end of Return of the Jedi. And he's fine. They put like 40 stitches in his head. He's okay. So they just live forever. And I think for her to all of a sudden be like, wait a minute, like I never smoked, I never did anything bad. Like why am I being punished for this? So she's going to fight it for as long as she can. I know she will because she's just as stubborn as I am. Mm-hmm. So that's been the really tough thing about it. I think she's also, it's weird when you get cancer when you're that age because you kind of look back and you go like, did I accomplish everything I wanted to? Am I proud? And she looks at her kids, she looks at her family, and she looks at her life, and she goes, yeah, I am. And it's like a weird sort of feeling because you should have
talked to you about that.
Oh yeah. I've talked to her about it. I think that it took me kind of like bringing that conversation to her. Nobody really stops to look back. You never do because you just assume it keeps going. Just like I assume the phone in my back pocket would keep ringing and be her picture would pop up. You know, one day that stops, and one day it stops with everybody. So I think that ultimately it's good to sort of pause and go like, what have I accomplished? Like, and you know, how long am I gonna be able to appreciate it?
I try to keep the thrust of these conversations on the person you're talking about, but I want to ask you that then. Turn that lens on yourself, Brian, for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What's your answer to that question when it comes to your life?
I'm probably way better at that than I should be, and I think I'm way better at that than I think a lot of people in my industry are, specifically because I think this is it's a very like, the word content gets thrown around a lot. Mm-hmm. Max Scoville and I were just talking about this morning about how we don't like that word because it feels like it's taking something passionate and heartfelt and boiling it down to just like a churn, like the sort of factory drive of make stuff. And there's a lot of like reacting to news. Here's a new thing. Make this thing. Churn out videos. Do this, do this, do this. Very few people actually stop and go like, oh my God, it's been 5 years since we started doing the comedy button. It's like, and that's why specifically doing that show, it gave us a time. That show is about reflection as much as it is propelling forward as an adult and not really knowing what you're doing. But it's about having conversations with people you care about, reminiscing about dumb shit you used to love. There's so much like, what's tomorrow? What's tomorrow? What's tomorrow? Not a lot of few people stop and go like, oh my God, we've been doing this for 5 years. Like,
but when you do that, you look at yourself and you go, I mean, are you satisfied with what you see?
Well, yes. I mean, I have that curse my mom passed to me, which is, as an artist, you never feel like you're doing enough. Like artists, and she told me this, selfishly create the world in their vision. And architects do that better than anybody else because everybody has to walk inside their fucking art and sleep and shit, and have sex, and do all the other fun stuff. I mean, she does a lot of government buildings, so that'd be weird if you just went in there and fucked. But whatever.
I'm sure it happens.
It does happen. It happens everywhere. That's the sex is an epidemic. A good one though.
That's a good one.
No, so I think ultimately like you create the world in your vision as an artist, and whether that's like you make an album that you hog people's ears for 35 minutes, or you make a painting and people have to see it on the way out of a building, or you make a building and you have to walk into it and live, and sleep, and fuck. You never really feel like you've done enough, and that's the curse. And that was like her thing was that like she was working full time and then teaching at night or on the planning board. Yeah. While my dad was working 3 jobs, and like. They didn't need to for the money. This wasn't like this sort of Dickensian street poet shit where they're like, oh, my son needs leg medicine, or whatever it was. I don't know if that kid needed leg medicine or just a new leg or how that works.
He needed leg medicine.
Okay. Was that it?
Yeah, his legs weren't falling off. They just had problems.
They seem really fucked up.
Well, I mean, I'm
Does
not.
That kid die?
No, if these events had gone unchanged, he would have died.
Like
but
if it
Scrooge
wasn't
changed.
If it wasn't for the
Scrooge
ghosts?
helped him, and he didn't die.
Got it.
Yeah.
So anyway, you keep making shit because you're never done. There's always something to make.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part of like being able to reflect and being nostalgic about what you've created, what you've accomplished, and who you're surrounded by, and the world you're in. You know, like just to geek out about the fucking Ninja Turtles every now and then is fun, and also cross that with that curse of like I need to keep making stuff to feel alive.
So you're not done. Are you satisfied?
Am I done?
You're not done.
With
That's
what?
clear. You're not done. You're
God,
not. You
no,
haven't-
Jesus fucking Christ,
But
no.
but are you satisfied?
I'm immensely satisfied with what I've done so far in the face of the fact that I probably shouldn't have been able to pull off any of it.
That's cool. Thank you for telling us about this person you're thankful for.
Sure.
For telling us about your mom.
This is all her fault.
Yeah,
You know?
that's well we'll blame her. But what do you what's the first thing you're gonna do when you're in the room with her again?
I'm gonna, if she's laying in a bed, I'm gonna cuddle up right next to her and put my arms around her. If not, she won't be. She'll be running. That's the thing. Like, she's stage 4 cancer, but you couldn't tell. She's one of those people that. She's one of those like fucking motivational things you see on Facebook that are like, I'm dying and I went on a mountain. You know, like that's her.
Yeah.
And I love her for that. It's that stubbornness. I'll run in the room and give her a big hug, and I'll tell her to sit down, and I'll take over whatever she's doing because I don't want her doing it. And then the second I get on the plane, she'll pick up the broom and just
Do exactly
yeah, exactly. It's just the way she is.
I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Of course.
We're going to shift over for a second to these are kind of a battery of little questions. I don't have a name for this yet. Kind of a sort of a lightning round of quick little things I want to ask people that are on. So
What's a quick soup?
I don't know if it's a delicious quick soup. Well, I mean, chicken noodle can be prepared quickly.
It can. I walked home the other night and it was just cold enough where I was like, I think I can make chicken noodle soup in 40 minutes. And
Did you do it?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, a can of corn soup can be prepared in seconds.
A can of anything can be prepared in seconds, depending on how sad you are.
Well, corn soup actually comes in like paper cartons too. You can
Really?
pour it in a mug and just put it in the microwave. And I used to do that in Japan sometimes. So, let's start down the battery here. You ready? You ready to go for this?
Sure.
You gonna do this thing?
Batteries.
Change of tone. All right, here we go. What's the best song written in the last 100 years?
Fucking shit. Really?
Yeah. What is it? Commit.
The best song written in
The last 100
the
years.
last 100 years.
Yeah.
I want to say.
Yep. The people of America are waiting.
I kind of want to say Creep by Radiohead.
Oh, I hate you so much
Why?
right now. No, this is supposed to be a no judgment zone, and then I judged, so I may edit that out.
No, that's fine. You can hate me.
No. Why Creep? Why Creep?
Well, like sonically, it's fucking incredible because you think you're listening to a completely different song until those like incredibly guttural guitars come in.
Yeah.
I think I might have sort of lost part of my virginity to that song. And also, it's awesome to just hear somebody on the radio that was just like, I'm fucking shit, aren't I? Like, this sucks. Like, I really wanted to be a good dude and it didn't work out.
Next one. What's the first word you think of when you hear the sound of your own voice?
Can I use? Can that be it?
Yeah, sure. That's a good answer. What's your favorite flavor ice cream?
Coffee.
If you could travel through time and visit anybody, who would you visit?
Probably a dinosaur.
A dinosaur?
Yeah.
Any particular species?
Like one that wouldn't eat me. Would be
Okay.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur? You like a dinosaur you love?
I mean, I really like Stegosaurus. I think that's just a fucked up shit to be. You know, like it's like you have that. Like, there's no reason for that. Like if they wanted to just put spikes on his tail, that's fine. But they did it on the whole thing. Like, come on, why would you do that? No one else really has to suffer that fate, except for Ankylosaurus, who's just like.
Well, Ankylosaurus is my favorite dinosaur, so I like that one.
I like him because he also gets a ball
on his tail.
Yeah,
yeah. He's like, hello, I'll have a mace tail.
They're that's like, right. Hey, I want to let you know that if you want to eat the most impossible to eat dinosaur body, I'm going to make it very difficult for you first.
What's the most terrifying creature in the natural world?
Right now, I think is Komodo dragons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frightened of those?
Yeah, those guys are fucked up. They'll like they put poison in your ankle and then follow you around for like a week.
For more on that, listen to a recent comedy button.
That's true.
That's right.
We get into that.
What's your favorite word?
Fuck.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, it's the most versatile. And you're not allowed to use it in a lot of places, which makes it special. And it doesn't really hurt anyone.
Just feels special.
Yeah.
Yep. Who was your first kiss?
A girl named Jess on in what's it called? I'm gonna say it's 7th grade, 8th grade,
yeah.
9th grade, first kiss, 9th grade. I don't think that wasn't her first kiss. Mm-hmm. And if you asked her about it, she'd be like, "Yuck,
yuck." Okay. My first kiss was also a Jess, but I was 5. Cake or pie?
Cake. Pie is sad. It's just fucked up. Come on, what do you like? Pie is disgusting. Get it together. oh, I made a fruit spread and I shoved it inside this fucking pancake stack. Like, what's wrong with you? It's so dumb. No one ever has pie on their birthday. It's fucking tragic. Pie is miserable.
I have pie on my birthday.
No, you don't.
I do.
Why? Because they're out of cake?
No, because I love pie.
Could you imagine putting like action figures all over a pie?
Why would you put action figures all
or
over
a candle
pie?
with a number on it? Oh, congrats! Oh, it sunk into the molten
Sunk
abyss.
into the deliciousness.
No, it didn't.
It did.
No, it
sunk into the
pies
pure
are fucking
deliciousness.
awful. You should feel ashamed. I hope you don't spread that to other people's birthdays. Guess what I brought you? Guess what I am? 100 rats followed me here because I play a flute. Don't bring a pie anywhere.
I'm laughing too hard.
Fucking pies are horrible.
All right, last one. What's one question you want to ask me?
Why pie?
Why pie? Because pie is succulent.
No, can I ask you a better one?
Yeah.
Why are you doing the show?
I'm doing the show because I really do like the idea of maybe having a little happy Bob Rossish space in the world where I can take these. I'm surrounded every day by interesting people.
It's true.
I really. I work in a city and in a vocation that constantly exposes me to brilliant, fascinating, intelligent human beings, and I'd like to tell their stories and let them tell stories of the people that matter to them, or just tell stories in general. Ultimately, that's it. This is a storytelling show. The idea here is that I love stories. I love the act of writing, and I want to get these stories out there so that people can relate, catch them. Wow, this is not a good pitch.
No, you're doing great. I love it.
But yeah, this is what I am. Ultimately, it's about getting stories told and taking the lens off of all the screaming for a little while. I don't want this to be sappy, although I don't mind. How about sappy's even okay? I don't want it to be saccharine. I just want it to be people telling the best stories they know about the people that matter. And hopefully we can make that work. And I'm also doing this because I've had an interest in a while in challenging myself and doing something different. And this is something I'm going to do to try to branch out and continue to build what I do because I care about this. That's my answer, and
that's a great. I'm glad I didn't just stick with the pie thing. Then we would just been fighting this whole time.
So that's why I'm doing this, and unabashedly, also for profit. If anybody wants to help out with that,
it's not unabashed. I mean, there's this weird sort of like, oh, I shouldn't be paid for my work.
Yeah, I don't at all mind being asked. So yeah, that's what I'll be, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Brian, thank you for telling
Thanks
me
for
about
having
your
me.
mother.
Honestly,
I'm glad you were here. You were wonderful.
Good luck
So
with
much fun.
the pocket soup.
Yeah,
Is that what it's called? The pocket soup?
No, it's called Pockets Full of Soup. You can find us at pocketsfulofsoup.com. You can also visit our Patreon. That'd be Jared Petty's Patreon page, or just Google Pockets Full of Soup, or go to the.com and you'll find it there. And if you'd like to support the show, that's how we stay on the air. And I certainly wouldn't mind anything you'd be willing to give. We have some neat little things there you can check out. But yeah, Pockets Full of Soup on Twitter, Facebook, all the other usual places.
Do you love soup?
I adore soup.
Do you adore soup? Because people are gonna start sending you soup.
No, I really love soup.
That's how that works.
If you want to send me soup, that's fine. I'm good with that.
We should have called the comedy button like Steak Station or something.
No,
like
I think the comedy button's a better name.
Get these like freeze blocks.
Probably get
from
free
Omaha
buttons.
Steaks. You don't even get free buttons. No one wants to send you buttons. That's like something like a weird, tragic, like Victorian bear has. We don't get buttons.
So what about you? We do. Plugs are good, and you do a lot of things. You're an artist in many mediums. Visual art. You're also you're a comedian. You make people laugh. You're an entertainer. You're a writer. Where can they find all the things you make?
You can find me. I can't say you can find me without thinking of 50 Cent being like, you can't find me in the club. That's like a curse I have. It's bad. I'm on Twitter, Agent Bizzle. I'm also on IGN all the time, just doing tons of videos with my good friend Max Scoville. We do Up at Noon. We do Podcast Beyond. We also have the Comedy Button, which is our weekly comedy variety show, which you've been on like half a dozen times.
Yeah, a
at
few
this
times
point.
now. Yeah.
So if you like this and you want more of whatever we just did,
but that end of the table multiplied several times because they're all hilarious human beings sharing with utter sincerity stories you want to hear.
It's a wreck.
You guys do a great thing.
Thank you. I also have an album called Misanthrope. It's free. It's at misanthropealbum.com, and I'm working on a new record right now. It should be done in a few months, hopefully. So.
Well, thanks, Brian, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching and listening to Pockets Full of Soup. We'll be moving on to the letter section next, so get ready for that. Hi, guys. Welcome to the mail and announcement sections of the show. But first off, a very special thanks to our Patreon producer, Xavier Saint-Amand Tremblay, whose generous support makes the show possible every week. Thank you so much, Xavier, for acting as our Patreon producer. It's been an incredible, unbelievable, unthinkably mind-boggling week for me, looking at the response to this show. I want to offer thanks to each and every one of you who's shown such tremendous generosity in listening and watching and writing and subscribing and in backing on Patreon, however you've chosen to take part. So many stories, so many letters from people, beautiful things people have written, incredible stories they've shared, so much positive encouragement, people offering to do art, people offering music, just all kinds of amazing things. I am doing my best to sort through it. I am frankly just stunned and flattered and bowled over. And a very special thanks to some of the people that have helped me put this together. Greg Miller and Tim Geddes and Nick Scarpino and Colin Moriarty, who has just backed me to the hilt on this. Brian Altano, who just appeared on the show, and Max Scoville, the guys at the Comedy Button, the good people at IGN who have just gone to the moon for me. I can't think of enough. And my wife, Angie, who is a constant and wonderful support. But thank you so much, viewers and listeners, for being a part of this community. I'm setting the time for our first Patreon group Google Hangout for June 20th at 11 a.m. PST. Once again, that'll be Saturday, June 20th, 11 a.m. Pacific time. If you're part of the Google Hangout tier on our Patreon, you can come to that. We're going to hang out. We're going to talk for a while. It's going to be fun. You'll have to figure out how the time zones adapt because I'm bad at math. But we're going to get together and chat for a while, and it's going to be a really fun hangout. I cannot wait to meet so many of you guys there. So once again, June 20th, 11 a.m. Pacific. That's on a Saturday. Our first Patreon Google Hangout for members of that tier. Our first Patreon exclusive audio episode should be ready in a couple of weeks. That's for all Patreon backers. Every single person who gives $1 or more on Patreon gets that free monthly audio episode. Looking forward to that getting out there. And for those who are giving at the $5 level, Pizza and Dinosaurs presents The Thirst of Laser Dracula. That'll be out before the end of the month. That's our special monthly serial. Think of it as a kind of a bedtime story for grown-ups. This is me writing ridiculous fiction and then reading it in sort of audiobook form. I hope you guys enjoy it. I have picked the title for the first episode. It is A Dark and Stormy Bite. So we'll move on from there. We're also hoping to be set up on iTunes by mid-month. That's the plan. We do have a plan to get on iTunes. I've also gotten some requests for Google Play, so we'll probably try to make that work as well. In the meantime, if you're looking for audio, you can find us on SoundCloud, and as always, you can find us on YouTube. If you haven't joined our Facebook group yet, you should, because it's fun and positive and nice, and kittens are always on topic. You can find us a couple of ways. You can either go to YouTube and search for the Pockets Full of Soup Facebook group. You can just go to pocketsfullofsoup.com. There's a link there. There's a lot of places you can find it, but you're absolutely welcome there. It's a very positive, fun group of people. We're already talking about some neat stuff. And now to the mail. If I don't read your letter this week, do not be alarmed. I'm not going to read all of them the first week here, but here's some of the thank yous that we've gotten from people this week. Thank yous to people that matter in their lives. If I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. From Joseph from Berlin, Germany. He says, I'm thankful for my mother, Rita. She's one of the strongest women out there and did it all by herself. Thank you, Mama. I love you. From Keanu Sue, this message. My parents are like ice and fire. They never not argue. I inherited both of their qualities. I see both sides. I understand yin and yang. From Jeremy. Thank you to my mother, Barb, who has always led by example when showing me the type of person I should strive to become. And then this message from Zua from China, who says, endless gratitude and appreciation to my wife, Pupu. She is the best thing that has happened to me. So that's from Zua from China. And those are the thank you messages that we have this week on Pockets Full of Soup. If you'd like to send a thank you message from someone, please keep them to 140 characters or less, and you can send those to mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. Once again, mail@pocketsfullofsoup.com. Try to keep those thank you messages to that length so we can get them all read. And if you want to send other mail to the show, of course, you're welcome to do that. If you want me to be able to read your letter online, please let me know. I'm reluctant to read just private correspondence. So if you're like, hey, it's okay to read this online, you can put that in there. That would be helpful to know too. So, guys, gals, human beings, people, I don't know where to start. I've cried more than once this week over what's happening here. I really just do not have the words for how fortunate and extraordinarily, not to get cheesy, how blessed I feel right now by you folks. So thank you for making my life better, and I hope that you're going to enjoy the upcoming shows just as much as you have what you've seen so far, if not more. Always open to suggestions, always open to comments, and thank you so much. Until next time, this is Pockets Full of Soup. I'm your host, Jared Petty, and thank you.